I call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. If we would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we start, just to remind everyone, we are recording the meetings now. We do have a quorum, 1,000. No one is absent. We do have one adjustment to the agenda. At this time, we are removing action item B to approve the RSU 40 district literacy plan. Removing it at this time. Next up is consent agenda. Approved minutes of November 16th, 2023.
Second.
It was Noah, I think. Noah, did you second?
You got it. I didn't say anything. It was her.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions, comments, or corrections from board members? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Abstention? It's 1,000. Yeah, 1,000 to 0. Let me just read the note. If you haven't already done so, please indicate your interest in speaking on the sign-in sheet. I want to review a few rules to help ensure that the public comments process goes smoothly. I encourage speakers to review board policy BEDH, public participation in board meetings, and policy AC, non-discrimination, equal opportunity, and affirmative action. Copies of both policies are available near the sign-in sheet. We ask that speakers identify themselves by name and town of residence. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes per comment. Speakers are to address questions and comments to the chair. The board does not discriminate nor tolerate discrimination against students or employees on the basis of their membership in a protected class. Speakers who share comments contrary to this policy will not be permitted to continue. We will not permit profanity, shouting, or comments that disparage or attack individuals or groups. No complaints or allegations concerning any person employed by the district or against particular students will be allowed. Requests for information or concerns that require further research will be referred to the superintendent to be addressed at a later time. If you have handouts to share, please leave them on the table by the sign-in sheet. The chair has the authority to stop any speaker who violates board policy, these guidelines, or the privacy rights of others. Okay, let me just get my timer going. Started. Okay. First up to speak, Steve Carr.
Thank you, David. Good evening. My name is Steve Carp. I live in Waterloo. The first book in the Bible is Genesis, the book of beginnings. It tells us who we came from, it tells us who we are, our identity. In chapter 1, verse 27, it says, God created man in his own image. In his own image, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Skip ahead a few chapters, chapter 5 says the same thing. God created them, male and female. Fast forward about 1,500 years from when that was recorded, and we see Jesus as recorded in Matthew 19 and Mark chapter 10, quoting the same thing, male and female. He created them. There are two genders. We know from Scripture that Jesus is God. We know from the Apostle John that God is love. Therefore, Jesus is love. And a passage we're all familiar with, heard it at weddings, the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13. Love's kind, love is patient. And then the Apostle Paul says, love rejoices with the truth. So let's teach the truth to our children in RSU 40, because God. My comments are respectfully submitted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next we have Al Robbins.
At this time, I don't have anything.
Okay. Okay, that is it for the list of people who wanted to speak tonight. Go ahead, Melvin, you said you had something.
I wanted to let the board know and the public know that Mr. Scott White, the principal here at this Union Elementary School, collects bottles and turns that into cash, which he supports disadvantaged families through the school. And the PTA that I thought had disappeared is alive here at Union School. So if anybody's got bottles that they don't want, and I had a barn full of them, and I went through Danny and he called Scott, and Scott come got them. But if you got bottles, there's a bin down here that we all have seen, but that's what it's for. So I want you to think of that, and every 5 cents counts. Thank you.
Did Scott put you up to that? Same.
Huh? No, Scott didn't want me to say a word.
You sound like a little nervous, actually.
Okay.
Went directly into the bin.
I told him we was gonna need a tractor trailer truck for him to pick up bottles. He said no.
Okay, so we'll move
Yeah.
on to action items. Is the teacher here?
Yes.
First action item is approved teacher nominations. Hopefully I'll say the name right. Roland Houghton, or Houghton, teacher at Miller School.
So moved.
So,
I got
Sandy and I'll second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Okay, opposed? Abstentions?
1,000.
Motion passes 1,000 to 0. Roland, what I usually do is, once a teacher is approved, if they want to say something, they're more than welcome to, but you don't have to say anything if you don't want to.
Sure. First of all, Roland Houghton,
and I'm looking forward to working at RC40, especially at Miller School, with an amazing first grade team I've already met, and thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Next action item, approve basics of pistol handling and women's defensive pistol fundamentals courses offered through Mid-Coast Adult and Community Education in accordance with policy JICIA, weapons, violence, and school safety.
So moved.
Second.
I'll put Julie down.
There was no one.
No and Julie.
Julie's one.
Yes. Okay, any questions from board members? Okay, let me. Go ahead, Emily.
So now we're gonna have more people handling guns and more guns in more people's homes. Do we give them up to do this? That's
Hold on,
That's the way.
hold on. Go ahead, Nolan.
I think it's a great idea. The fact that we would be able to provide information on the safe handling of firearms, I feel like is a great idea. I definitely don't think that's something we should discourage. I also think the defensive classes are another good idea. Again, I just think us pushing the idea of safe firearm handling is definitely something we should be doing. So that's all I would say.
Sandy?
I have to reiterate what he's saying. I'd rather have somebody know how to handle a gun, how to use it, than somebody grabbing one and just arbitrarily hurting themselves. I mean, I don't think it's a bad lesson to learn, and it's there. So it's, the guns aren't going away. I'd rather have somebody know how to use them and how to handle them than have accidents happen because they don't.
Any other board members have, Eric?
Yeah, I'm a little bit ambivalent on it, but I find it more fair to whole society. And we have to worry about guns, and we have to deal with these things. It's a shame, and we have digressed tremendously in the past 20 years where guns have become a commonplace in everybody's home and everybody's lives, and I think it's a shame. And I agree, I think safety taught and how to handle a gun is better than not. It's just too bad we've gone down this road where it feels that we have to do this. I think it's a sad state of affairs for the country and the world. That's my opinion.
Okay. Any other board members? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Okay, opposed? Abstention. Yeah. And
817, 128, 55.
yeah. Motion passes 817, 128 to 55. Next up is approved policies for second read. Noah?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the following policies for a second read by the board. Policy JHB, truancy. Policy JICI, the extracurricular and co-curricular activities code of conduct for middle school and high school students. Policy JKAA, use of physical restraint and seclusion. And policy JKAA-R, the procedure on physical restraint and seclusion.
So you, Nicole, seconded?
Yeah.
Any questions from board members? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Abstention?
Emily, did you, I didn't get your vote. Did you, you voted no?
I was in favor.
I said, thank you.
Is that 1,000? Motion passes 1,000 to 0. Going over the next few meetings, personnel negotiations, December 12th, 4 p.m. at central office. Learning committee, December 14th, 5 p.m. at Miller School. Facilities, December 21st, 4 p.m. central office. Finance, December 21st, 5:30 p.m. central office. And the next board meeting is December 21st, 7 p.m. central office. The next Region 8 meeting is December 20th, 6 p.m. at Midco School of Technology. And does any board member have anything else before we adjourn meeting? Okay, it's 7:16. We are adjourned. I will go into the board workshop. This is to go over school board self-evaluation, the superintendent evaluation process. And Steve Bailey, Executive Director of Maine School Management, will be leading. If you want to hang out, I can.
And put me down at the end. That's-
Probably.
Yeah. We need a few more days. And do you want to give a little bit of context? Yeah.
Just wanted to just give a little bit of a brief background. I know over the last few years, some board members have talked about trying to do something different with the superintendent evaluation. Some people have felt that the evaluation that we've been using they don't feel comfortable in answering some of the questions. Plus also, we've never had a board self-evaluation. So I thought, instead of having Steve come down and do one on the superintendent, then come down and do one on the board self-evaluation, that we'd have it all done at the same time. And before we started, I'll start with Eric. If you could just go around the room and identify yourself, please.
Clifton internship.
Joshua Blackman, Warren.
Naomi Otto, Warren.
Randy Casa, Warren.
Melvin Williams, mouthpiece.
Of Waldeboro.
Yeah, it's Waldeboro. Well, surrounding town. Anyway.
The whole state now. Karen Pike, business manager.
Steve Nolan, superintendent.
Danny Jackson Waldberg, who also gives Melvin a ride home once in a while.
Maybe not tonight. Julie Swindler, Warren.
Nicole Taylor, Union.
Noah Botley, Washington.
Sheila Abernathy, Washington. Vivian Whelan, Waldeboro. Dr. Emily Class, Waldeboro.
Dr. Matthew School.
Well, thanks very much. And it's actually nice to see you and have you identify yourself by town, but it's also nice to have your names in front of you, so that will help later on too. Thank you for putting them so I can see them too. I'm here tonight really to be able to provide the information, and as Danny and Steve and I spoke earlier, I'm not here to sell anything. I'm here just to provide information as well as to provide some samples of what can happen. And in terms of the things that we've talked about before, I have provided to you materials that I'd like to go over with you tonight to be able to demonstrate some of those samples. The first thing that I'd like to highlight is the thing on the left-hand side of your packet. It is what we call the superintendent evaluation process. It's what Maine School Management has put out together with the Maine School Boards Association and the Maine School Superintendents Association, because one of the things that MSMA does is try to support both the School Boards Association as well as the Superintendent Association. We also feel that the evaluation of the superintendent as well as the board self-evaluation is a joint process, and it is a process. And it's one that we hope, would be something that you would begin to use and be able to think about in terms of your own work, but also be able to think about how can you as a board work together with the superintendent to be able to provide an annual evaluation that's both meaningful, it provides an opportunity for growth, and also is aligned with the goals that you have set, for the district. I was able to take a look at your comprehensive educational plan and identify the goals that were there, as well as your mission and your vision, and know you have a direction that you want, for the district. So there are many things that are connected here in the plan that I'd like to go over just briefly with you before I get into some of the other components of some of the examples that I would suggest for you tonight. But the first piece that I would just like to have you open up to is the introduction, which is on page 4 of this document. And
Steve, I think you're going to say this. Go ahead.
The draft stamp on the copy you provided has blocked
A lot of the words
a lot of
out.
the text on the pages. But I think board members have this in their packet. Did you get it in your folder? We sent it out with the packet, but you didn't get a copy here. I'm sorry.
isn't that interesting? Okay, well, that should not have draft. Oh my goodness, all right. Okay, well, what we'll do is, Steve, you said that the one you received did not have that on it, correct?
Right.
Yeah,
I'm
and you want it
trying
on
to
the,
figure out the best way to get it to everyone.
Karen will,
We could
Karen
do
will
that. It's not this.
that would be a good idea, yeah. You can make up
Put
your
a
own.
bird in here, put a down in here.
Is it just that one?
I think it's just that one, Karen.
Okay, I'll go do that.
I'm sorry about that.
Could we just project it? Would that work?
I don't know if you're gonna be able to read it.
Yeah, I think
if
you,
If you,
so What I'll do is I'll share some of the information that actually you don't need to read, for this particular part. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's your first mistake of the day, right?
Fire the
I don't
secretary.
think so. I won't do that either because it was my responsibility for checking the documents before it went out, so. In terms of this particular piece, though, I am going to read a little bit from this. You as a board, you have one employee, right? Superintendent. And by statute, as a board, one of your roles and responsibilities is to hire the superintendent. I would say also supervise the superintendent, but then also evaluate the superintendent. And so, that's a major piece. Now, later on in this particular document, we also talked though, and I'll go to the page and you can make reference to it a little bit later on. We have in your packet a policy is called BBAB. It's a school board self-evaluation policy. You may have it in your series of policies. But we really feel as if you're going to be going about evaluating the superintendent, you also should take some time to be able to evaluate yourself as a board, to be able to identify how are you doing as a board, working together as a team to be able to support the superintendent and support the goals you have for making the district to be the district you want it to be and have the opportunities you want to have for those students. So that's why we paired tonight a conversation a little bit about self-evaluation of the board and thinking also about how can that support evaluation of the superintendent. And so we paired those things together within this document. And when you do get the final form, and Karen has a chance to be able to make that ready for you, on page 6, it does speak about the importance of that. And that may not have been, well, I guess it was affected by some of the draft language, but you'll see that left-hand column, it says talk about an important prerequisite. It really is the importance of the board thinking about how you can take advantage of self-evaluation of you as the board first. So before we get too much further into this, why don't we go right to those two documents on your left-hand side, behind that bigger document, and it's called School Board Self-Evaluation. It's really stapled together. It's one it's one packet. And it's our sample policy, BBAB, and like I say, you may have it already adopted as one of your own policies. But the front page of the policy really identifies, what's the reason for. Why would you as a board do that? During self-evaluation, the board will evaluate itself as a whole. The self-evaluation should emphasize areas of strength as well as those identified for improvement. Board members are encouraged to use the evaluation process as an opportunity to assess their own personal performance. The board will determine the areas of competence and/or board responsibilities and relationships that will be used as the basis for the self-evaluation. So a lot of it is self-determined in terms of what do you think is important and what you would want to be evaluated. And so it really becomes a local document. It becomes a local process and procedure for you being able to identify what is it that you as a board want to see happen. If a self-evaluation instrument form is used, a composite profile of responses may be tabulated to provide a more detailed analysis of board performance. As no single instrument or form may encompass all of the board's responsibility or sufficiently address the relationship between responsibilities, the board need not limit itself to those items that appear on the instrument or form, but should use it as a means of structuring and stimulating board discussion. So from a board role and responsibility point of view, as well as the duties and responsibilities you're given as board members by statute, those are listed on the back of that policy. From board visioning and strategic planning all the way down to board legislative involvement and advocacy from A to M. We would recommend to you or suggest to you that you think about those different criteria, A through those different standards, the board standards, A through M, and think about how can we assess ourselves as a board to be able to determine how well we're doing. Now, you might use these 13, you might use others, but these are ones that we would say are aligned with what we think are appropriate for you from the statute in terms of your roles and responsibilities. Now, this is at least a concept. in terms of what you might do. To follow up in terms of having a policy like this, a set of procedures that might take place would be for you to use the school board self-evaluation that is the third page in. And this is a document it's 26 questions. We also have one that has 29. It has 3 more questions on it. I'm going to get that one to Steve and to Danny as well. But these 26 questions align with the A through M criteria that are on this page. And so if I were to ask you, if I were to come down or if your board chair and superintendent would help guide you through this process, what I would ask you to do is to take a look at these questions and think about how the board does this work. Not you individually, but how often does the board do this work? So for instance, the grading scale is 3 always, 2 often, 1 rarely, and 0 was never. And the first question would be, how often is the board's primary focus on student learning and achievement? Is it always? Is it often? Is it 1 rarely, or is it never? Okay. And you do that same type of response for each of your individual responses all the way down through, but thinking about the board. And you're thinking about how are you working together as a unit to be able to think about supporting what goes on within your school district. So if you get down to number 10, the board evaluates the superintendent on clearly defined performance criteria. How often does that occur? Is it always? Is it often? 1 rarely, or is it 0 never? So once all that was done, and if I were doing this, I would collect all of your forms. I would put them on a spreadsheet. I would tabulate them, and then we'd identify, if you were using all these questions, you know, which ones were closest to 0, which ones were closest to 1, which ones were closest to 2, and then 3. With the raw data collected, I would then turn that information back over to you, and you would have a conversation in terms of, okay, well, these were closer to 3, and that may be good. Is that something we want to continue to support? These were kind of in the middle in the 2 range, and these were the ones that, you know, were kind of not where we want them to be necessarily, but they were only happening rarely. And is it rarely because we don't pay attention to them anyway? And that's good, because we're trying to pay attention to these things over here. That would all be part of the conversation. Once that conversation happened, then you have the opportunity to work together as a board to be able to identify what are some goals that we can do as a board that would help our work together as a board, but also to be able to work toward the goals that you set here for the district in your comprehensive education plan. Because your work as a board should be in sync with what you want to see happening for the rest of the district. And if you can do that, if you can model that, if you do model that, then it also is suggesting to the rest of the district, okay, well, let's get behind the board. This is really what we want to see happen, and this is where we're going to do it, and this is how we're going to try to align our meetings, our agendas, our goals, and our resources to be able to make the things happen we want to see go on for the district. So that would be the first part in terms of where I would see, you know, the board becoming engaged in a self-evaluation process. That if you can do it annually, it's great. If you can do it maybe twice, you know, once every 2 years, that would be good too. But, you know, certainly, are we on track in terms of where we want to be? Boards typically do this within some type of a workshop, either during the summertime, maybe late July or early August, when things are a little bit slower in terms of what your normal board work would be, which also allows for the time to be able to think back on what the year has gone on and what's gone on through the prior year, but also thinking about, okay, where do we want it to go as we start the next school year. So before Karen comes back with the other forms, what do you think about this? And does it align with some of the thoughts that you've had, or Steve or Danny, if you want to kind of chime in terms of where you'd like to go with this? But you as a board, if you could, what are your questions that you might have about this particular process?
Does any board member have any questions?
Questions or comments?
Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I think it's a good idea. I've been here for 12 years. I don't think we've evaluated that. Those going forward, but
Yeah.
you never know.
Right.
But I just want to make
whether these questions are, I'm not sure who to file the questions, or if they're relevant for all boards, or if they're questions that we should be asking that aren't being asked.
Now, we had a terrific, because you want the instrument to be able to be meaningful to you, you want to take a look at, are the questions the ones you want to have asked? So certainly that would be part of the process too. Is this the tool you want to be using to be able to create the evaluation and use the evaluation? Other comments or questions?
Any other comments right now?
Okay. So that was the first part in terms of both the need for as well as how it might be done, as well as, well, let me put one more thing in there too. I would suggest if you haven't included it yet, that you think about a school board governance calendar that not only talks about what's happening meeting to meeting, but somebody would have the chance to be able to take a look, from July to the next June. What's the year full of activities that will be happening for the board? Not sure what's in that, Melvin, but
It hasn't been
It's
opened.
diet stuff, it's okay.
But a governance calendar really can identify, okay, what's happening for the board over the course of the year. And with regard to a board self-evaluation, that could be included in that school board governance calendar in terms of where you do it, what it's for, and how it's utilized to be able to help support the goals you want to see moving forward as a board. So that would be one recommendation that I would.
Emily, go
Would
ahead.
you recommend maintaining it calendar?
Well, at the first point, I would see would be the board chair and the superintendent who would at least develop it. But I think the board would want to take a look at it and keep it active. I mean, keep it alive over the course of the year. Both to record what was done as well as to be thinking about, well, oh, wait a minute, we didn't have this on the calendar, but this is something that should be done. So you put it on that calendar and then you include it for the next year so that you pay attention to it. And I also think that could be a valuable tool for new board members coming on and being able to identify, well, what's the year going to look like? And some people put all of their, and Steve, you partnered with the superintendent in terms of a calendar of all the meetings that are scheduled. But that talks about the meetings, but it doesn't necessarily talk about, what does a facilities, if you have a facilities committee, what are their meeting dates going to be like? And what are the responsibilities going to be for facilities? If you've got negotiations, when are they going to be meeting and who's on them? And, what's the timeline for when that's going to occur? Certainly, if you have a personnel committee, that's going to have a busy time from, February all the way, through into September. But those are kinds of things that if it can show up on a governance calendar, then you begin to identify what is the role of the board and when do we actually do the responsibilities that we take over the course of the year.
Is this the open?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
I guess.
There's 9 days.
I have an original.
So the next piece, as we think about now superintendent evaluation, if you take a look at page 5, why conduct a superintendent evaluation? Now, number one, we'll look at policy in a minute, but number one, by policy, you do have a policy that indicates that there should be evaluation on an annual basis. But if you look at page 5 on the document you just got, it should identify for you that we're really talking about accountability, accountability of the superintendent. Is the person doing the kind of job that you would want and expect? And also, is it something that, I'm seeing, I'm sorry, you're still even on the, you got draft even on the one you just got, is that right?
But it's, you can see the
You
words.
can see the words, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Danny and Steve, you got a, what do you call a discount for tonight's workshop?
Oh, good, thanks.
I'll take off the color copy.
That's great.
It's a page.
So accountability is a big piece, because you have one employee, and that piece really is about making sure the person is doing the kind of job you've hired them to do. You need to have the opportunity to be able to know is the person doing the job. So one of the things that Danny did mention when he first spoke a little bit, we often have superintendent evaluation tools, and for a lot of people, it's gobbledygook in terms of, the questions that are asked, and, can you give a rating or a score on a particular area that you may not see the superintendent do, because you just don't have that opportunity, nor in some cases should you have that opportunity to be able to see the superintendent perform those duties. He's doing an awful lot of work behind closed doors, or in confidential conversations, or with staff or other places. You're going to see him in the public in these kinds of meetings, and making sure that things are well organized and well oiled to be able to do the job and be able to communicate well with the community, and make sure that budgets are well prepared to be able to bring to the public and those kinds of things. Those are all very public types of things, but there are many that aren't. So it's difficult, for you, but it's also important that you have a tool that you can provide some meaningful feedback, to be able to identify this accountability standard. The other piece is to be able to have the opportunity to create and cultivate a board superintendent relationship. Now, Steve's been here a long time, and it's
We're lucky.
what
We're lucky.
you are.
We are lucky.
For a number of reasons. The average superintendency in Maine is about 3 years. And it's important to have some consistency. You're lucky in two different ways. You've had a board chair and a superintendent in their positions for this period of time where they've been able to develop a relationship. And so you have the opportunity for a working relationship in terms of the district. So that's another positive. But one of the pieces about board superintendent relationship as it relates to the evaluation is where we also put the supervision word in there as well, because we think it's valuable during the course of the year for the board, the whole board, not just the chair, to have the opportunity to sit with a superintendent in an executive session, to be able to do a check-in, to be able to have an opportunity for the board to ask questions of the superintendent in terms of how it's going, but also for the superintendent to be able to sit back and ask the board, okay, how's it going? Are there things that I can be more aware of, or are there things that I need to pay more attention to? And have that conversation in a supervisory sense, but, within an executive session, so it's not in the public, for the public to hear, and they don't have the right to hear that. You have every reason to be able to go into executive session to be able to have that type of a conversation. But that's a supervisory type of a thing that we encourage. And even for superintendents who have been in the position a while, we think it's valuable so that it's not something that, you come to the end of the year and all of a sudden you say, well, we've got this evaluation to do, and there was this thing that happened back in December, and I wish we would have said something back then, but we didn't. And so you got this elephant in the room, thinking about, okay, well, how do we deal with this? When there's some things that, probably might have been said, and they had been able to clear things up earlier in the year. So that's why we think, from a supervisory point of view, some frequent check-ins, whether it be quarterly or at least twice a year, to be able to have some opportunity for conversations. The other piece of this is Danny and your superintendent, they've got I would guess, just from the number, that they've got a different relationship in terms of a board chair and the superintendent than the superintendent and any one of you that set, on the table here in terms of the amount of time that the superintendent and the board chair meet or work together to be able to plan meetings. And so it's difficult, for the superintendent to have, let's see, is it 14 on your board? 16 on your board? Yeah, how does the superintendent have the same kind of relationship, with the chair as with each of the 16 of you? That's not really possible, but if you were to have the opportunity to sit in the executive session, have the opportunity in a more informal setting, just to be able to have conversation with the superintendent, how are things going? Maybe you do that. I don't know if you do that or not, but that would be a way to be able to think about, can you fulfill a supervisory role? So it's not just coming, once a year that you're doing an evaluative role, well, you've got some basis for some of that conversation to be able to make an assessment, with the superintendent at that point in time. So that's one of the things that I think is important in terms of why a superintendent evaluation is important. The other thing is providing the opportunity for a superintendent professional development. Any evaluation, be it teacher or student, superintendent, board, should be thought of from a growth mindset, point of view. Is there an opportunity, or where is the opportunity here to be able to grow? So within the district or within some professional development area that the superintendent is interested in or may need to have some growth, that's another opportunity to be able to either point that out or have conversations about what would be helpful for the superintendent. And then obviously number 4, if you turn on to page 6, it's important as you think about contractual and compensation considerations. After you do all the homework, after you have all your conversations, you've done all your ratings, and you come to the point, okay, well, what does this mean for the continued length of the contract of the superintendent? Or is there a way that we could quantify this and recommend some type of, financial improvement or compensation increase, for the individual based on what you see with the position as well as the value that they add to the district and the communities. So each of those 4, I think, are really, really important. It's another thing another reason why it's important you take the evaluation of the superintendent in a serious manner. And so you give some weight to what it is that you think you want to be doing. The other piece about a superintendent evaluation, this goes on also on page 6, thinking about how to start the process. But when you start the process, you have to also think about the end of the process. And part of the end of the process is the board speaking, with one voice in terms of information that you want to share with the superintendent. So in that particular way, if you take a look at that second to the last paragraph on the bottom of page 6, members need to know the unique role they play as employer to the superintendent. First, the board has a responsibility to speak with one clear voice to the superintendent regarding its expectations for their work. Second, as trustee for the communities or community, the board has the obligation to ensure the superintendent is meeting the goals the board has established and is operating the district in compliance with the written board policy. So there's the accountability piece again as well. But the one voice is really important to be able to help give clear direction to the superintendent. Superintendent can't be chasing the tails of 16 different people. It really has to be seen as, okay, well, what does the board want, for giving direction and guidance, to the superintendent? So not only during meetings, but especially after the evaluation process has been completed, that's really, really important. So if we can keep on moving through this particular document. Anybody have any questions so far in terms of what I've been chatting about? Making sense? Okay. All right.
When you talked about talking as a board, the idea is to Steve, is that the same concept as the board acting as a whole board and not just 4 or 5 members?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's same practice.
Yes, that's right. Okay. Yeah. So another piece going along with what Dr. Spino just talked about is clarity is equal importance to consensus, because being really clear to the superintendent is really, really important. So let's move on. So if we go to page 9, there are some documents that help with this particular process. I would like to, you have them. I want to talk to them a little bit. But you've got some documents there that really help set the foundation for what should be included, within an evaluation tool as well as process. One is the superintendent's contract, the employment contract, because that's what really drives and is provide for his ability to work within your district. Equally, a job description is really critical in terms of what you want him to be doing within the role of superintendent. Now, some of those are state guided, and some of those are specific to your community. Copy of the district's mission and vision statements and the goals. You've got your comprehensive education plan. That's really important, and it's one for the superintendent to be able to work toward as well. And then obviously school board policies. There are policies that help guide the evaluation process. Moving on to page 10, you've got school district plans as well as professional standards. Now, some of the documents that are listed here in these 2 pages are also in your packet. And I want to point these out to you on the right-hand side. The first one is superintendent of schools. This is a job description. It's a sample. It's a little bit different than the one that is currently in place for your superintendent here in RSU 40. It's one that I provide to you as a sample and for you to think about as you think about the revision of a job description that may help support the evaluation process. This job description is also paired and connected to the next 2 documents. I'm going to bring out the single sheet document first, because that single sheet document is the certification requirements for an initial certification of a superintendent in Maine. And what it talks about here, if you look at the document that says administrator certificates, and if you look at 4.1 and then go down to B and then 1 and go down to 1E, it's the middle. It's the middle of the page. Meets through one of the pathways the standards of the Professional Standards for Educational Leaders, PSELs. And that's what this document is, and that's right behind that sheet on the right-hand side. So the job description is linked to the certification standards for becoming a superintendent. It's also linked to these are the actual standards that would be included as part of the job description. But the job description, as you see, and I'll talk a little bit about this, the standards are written for both building leadership as well as for district leadership. So I'm back at the job description of the superintendent of schools. The standards, and the first one would be mission, vision, and core values. That's down at the bottom of page 1. The second standard would be ethics and professional norms. The third standard would be equity and cultural responsiveness. Fourth standard would be curriculum, instruction, and assessment. That's down at the bottom of page 3. Next standard would be community of care and support for students. Professional capacity of school personnel would be the top of page 5. And then you'd have professional community for teachers and staff. Engagement of families and communities would be the bottom of page 6, middle of page 6. Operations and management would be the middle of page 7. And then school improvement would be the middle of page 8. So those are the standards that are required to be met for certification for superintendency, but also for recertification, thinking about what's important for the superintendent to be able to do and demonstrate to be able to maintain their position. So all of the criteria underneath those standards may or may not apply to a district level leader. Some of them are more specific to a school level leader or a building level leader. And so if you were to use this as a job description, you may want to take a look at this and pull out, some of those descriptors that may be more appropriate for building level leadership than district level leadership, if that makes sense. So these three documents, I wanted to make sure that you, number one, saw the link of all of the three, as well as how you might use them to be able to help craft a job description that was meaningful for this particular district. The last document I want to just point out on the right-hand side is making sure that you have a policy that is up to date with regard to supervision and evaluation of the superintendent. So what MSMA has done, and it is a little bit different than the policy you have here in RSU 40 right now, but we've gone ahead and updated the policy CBI, and that should be the last one on the right-hand side. And it's called Supervision and Evaluation of the Superintendent. We included the word supervision in there in addition to evaluation because of the concept of trying to have you schedule within an executive session times some supervision opportunities, some check-ins, throughout the year, just to make sure that things are going okay for you and things are going okay for the superintendent. And, just check and see are the things that we can do in the short term to be able to make things go well, over the course of the whole year. So that process is highlighted in the rest of this handout. And on the would be page, it's appendix C. So that's going to be page 27, maybe 28. Yeah, page 28. This is a sample calendar for superintendent evaluation activities. The state has a form that it requires to be filled out on an annual basis in a school union, but it's at the end of the year the superintendent's contract is going to expire. So for instance, let's say the superintendent didn't have a rolling contract, but had a contract that was going to expire June 30th of 2024. You would have to fill out a form that says to the state that we have in place a plan to hire a superintendent or have a superintendent be hired for July 1st of 2024. And that form would have to be submitted to the state. You have to do that on an annual basis if you're in a school union or the last year of the contract that the superintendent. That's just to make sure that each district has a superintendent, a certified superintendent in place. What this form demonstrates is you don't necessarily have to have your superintendent evaluation occur in December, because that form is supposed to be submitted at the end of December. And sometimes school districts, they try to schedule their superintendent evaluation in December, which is halfway through the year, and you may or may not have enough information to be able to identify what you want to know to be able to provide that information to your superintendent. So this provides the opportunity for you to be able to schedule your evaluation cycle in a different way than having to have your evaluation happen in December. And so there's nothing in statute that says you have to do it during that time. You can establish that and create that however you like, as it best fits the needs for you in being able to work with the superintendent. It is best to make sure that by the end of the year for sure, the status of your superintendent and whether or not you're going to be looking for another one, or whether the person has resigned, retired, or it's just time to continue to think about what the length of the contract of the superintendent is going to be in terms of moving forward with the current superintendent that you might have. But Appendix C gives you a different alternative in terms of thinking about when or how you might like to schedule and think about the evaluation of the superintendent. There are different tools that can be used. I know you have a evaluation tool you're currently using. both Mr. Noland and other superintendents around the state are involved in a little bit of a group to explore other types of tools that might be more meaningful to you as it relates to the kinds of criteria that you would like to see evaluated as well as reported on. But the important thing is that you have the chance to be able to give feedback to the superintendent, have a tool that asks for input from you. That input is then collated by the chair of the board, or it could be the evaluation chair, and be able to then be shared with the superintendent. Couple of things in the policy I do want to point out. Any tool that's chosen,
In which policy, Steve?
policy CBI,
CB.
yeah, would be the last one. If you go to page 2 of that sample policy, the following guidelines apply to the annual evaluation. The superintendent should be involved in developing the evaluation form and standards, or reviewing the existing evaluation form and standards. That way, it should be a collaborative process. Number one, the superintendent should know what they're being evaluated on, as well as should have some say in terms of what the tool here should be. Evaluation should be at regularly scheduled time and place in an executive session in which all board members are present. And the optional language is, with no other items on the agenda. It's really helpful if you can provide some time for this, because those conversations should be meaningful and not be at the end of a long night where you've already had some, maybe some tense and terse conversations, and you just want to get through the evaluation as opposed to spending some meaningful time, with your only employee. C, the superintendent should prepare for the evaluation by conducting a self-evaluation based on the job description, mutually agreed to and previously developed goals, and knowledge of the district. This self-evaluation is prepared prior to the individual board members completing their superintendent evaluation documents. So you'd have the opportunity. This is one of the places where you as board members can learn from the superintendent in terms of, well, what has it been that I've been doing all year? And, during the times that you haven't seen what I've been doing, these are things that I can share with you about how what I've done, as well as how things have been going. So that's really important. Then the board should prepare for the evaluation as follows. Board members will submit individual written assessments to the chair. That's again using the evaluation tool you've identified, using the evaluation form and standards with supporting comments giving specific examples. The chair may seek individual assessment from other sources within the district, such as but not limited to central office administrators and directors, building administrators, and teacher leadership. We encourage the concept anyway of trying to have the board get some information from other people that the superintendent works with most directly. And they have the opportunity to be able to give feedback to the board in terms of their interactions with how things have gone with the superintendent. And there is another form that is in here. It's Appendix D, I believe. And it's called a targeted survey. It's Appendix D. And that's on page 31. The intent of conducting a targeted feedback survey is to identify those certain people that would be of value for you to be able to hear from. We don't necessarily suggest it to be from everyone. Like, I wouldn't do a community 360. How many people are really going to know what the superintendent does? And even often, sometimes even of all staff, because they're involved with what they're doing in terms of their teaching in their classrooms. Yes.
So my question is this, so you say on page 2 and 4.
Yeah.
Where it says the chair may seek individual assessments. That means the chair does it. That doesn't mean every board member can go to the teacher.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I just want that clarified.
Yes.
For the new members, so they understand they can't just walk around the school.
No. This is part of a formal process,
Okay.
and that's why I say in terms of a targeted survey, feedback survey, it would be for selected individuals.
Yeah, and
It
that's
wouldn't be
approved
for everybody.
by the board, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Thank you. Important question. Other questions? good stopping point here, but other questions?
Actually, yes.
Go ahead.
So if, just spinning off what Sandy said, if the chair seeks that information, does that then get shared to us for us to be able to fill out our evaluation forms? Like, how do we properly
Yes.
fill them out? Okay,
Yes.
so he would give that to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you'd have that information, you'd have the information from the superintendent in terms of a self-evaluation as well.
And it'd be, with this new process, when we figure out, it'll be a little, of course, different than what we do now, but Steve, the process we use now, we use the same evaluation form that we send to the administrators. And because right now, when the evaluation happens, there's one report that says school board members, the other report says administrators, so it separates out. So you know which group is which. And I'm envisioning something like that here as well.
Steve,
Yes.
On this appendix E, page 31, it says, you have in here, well, it's referenced in, I think, each of the steps, but in step 1, that the superintendent board work with an independent consultant to determine the questions. Is that something that main school management can help with?
Yes.
Or you can refer someone?
Yeah.
Recommend someone?
Yes.
For that? Okay.
Yeah. And again, I mean, you could do it yourself, but that's also something that we'd be glad to help with, or you could identify somebody else that you may want to help with that. But the other part of that is, in this particular, this is a sample, that the consultant should administer the survey, provide the results to the board. That provides a little bit of a third-party opportunity for the person to be objective and not be subjective in terms of the results and in reporting the information, to the board chair. And so the people getting the information from that targeted feedback survey aren't thinking, well, they're being, pulled, oppressed, or, targeted in any one different direction with regard to the evaluation, because you want to try to keep that as objective as you can, as you try to pull information together. Other questions?
Do you have a list of consultants? Is there a list of people that district should work with?
We could find at least a half a dozen that would be valuable and available to you for you.
Because I think as a board, that makes sense. I mean, I'm a firm believer in evaluations for teachers, for administrators, for supers and so forth, that should be done out of house, not in house. Because you really need to have that view of someone who knows exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
You're playing with someone's life like that.
Yeah.
And I don't firmly believe that emotion's out of it. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
So I think having that option really provides
And while we haven't done it, I say we at MSMA has not done that in terms of being the third party administrator of the evaluation process. I do know there are other state school board associations that do provide that as a service, for their members as that third party, just providing the raw data, to be able to compile it, to be able to, then have you start the conversation, because that's really the important part is the conversation after you have collected the information. Other thoughts or questions right now? Okay, then to continue through the policy a little bit, after the chair develops a composite evaluation for members' written opinions, the board will meet an executive session to review the composite and materials related to the superintendent's performance as prepared by the chair. So there is a responsibility of the chair to be able to have this information come together and then be able to present it to you in a collective forum, so that you can both share it as well as have a conversation about it. The superintendent may be invited to or excluded from this session at the board's discretion. However, in most cases that I've been involved with, the board, yes, does want a chance to talk amongst themselves first. They want to bring the superintendent in to be able to have conversation with the superintendent, and then they may want to, talk again after the superintendent's left, just to be able to, talk about compensation and those kinds of things. However, There is a note in this sample policy that says the superintendent must be present for any discussion that may lead to or result in allegations, charges, or investigation, misconduct, discipline, discharge. And that's not a concern as far as I'm concerned here. I just want you to know in terms of the policy and in terms of the practice of any evaluation, that would have to be made note of, and making sure that you're following statute as well as your policy. And then the board will meet with the superintendent and evaluate in executive session to review the evaluation. And all of steps 1 through 5, are suggestions in terms of a policy were you to adopt this. F, the board will meet in executive session to discuss issues such as compensation, benefits, and extension of contract. The superintendent may be invited or excluded at the board's discretion. So I think some of the steps you probably have been following here are similar to this. I think this explains it a little bit in greater detail in terms of a revised policy. But what I wanted to be able to have the opportunity to do and was asked to do is be able to make the connection between the school board self-evaluation, the importance of that in terms of you setting goals and identifying how the board is doing. And then at the same time, thinking about, because Steve and Danny had asked to think about, is there a different evaluation process? Is there a updated job description that could be developed that is more in keeping with the certification standards and the roles and responsibilities of the superintendent, and then pile that on together with an evaluation process that was inclusive of the board, inclusive of some potential targeted survey feedback from other folks, and then a way to be able to compile the data to have it be meaningful to the superintendent in a conversation for you, as well as the one together with the board. So with that, I guess I'll just open it up for questions, and I'd be glad to even talk more if there's information you'd like to follow up on with regard to specific tools or other suggestions, or if there's a subcommittee of the board, personnel committee, or something else that takes off on this and would like to discover or explore this in greater depth. I'd be glad to help with that process as well.
Anybody have any?
Is this done for just the superintendent or also the assistant superintendent as well?
We don't have any involvement in the assistant superintendent.
Okay,
Because we have just the one employee.
okay.
That is,
I just assumed because it was part of the budget decision making too, so.
go ahead, Sandy.
So they
Oh,
being
sorry,
safe-
wait, are you through, Nicole? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, Sandy.
So am I to hear that you're gonna look at reevaluate how you have the superintendent's questions versus how they've done in the past?
This was the whole his.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's where we're going with this.
So part of that would be, is this job description what you want? So that may be some revision of or relooking anyway at the job description. Is the job description aligned with certification as well as evaluation standards? So there's some work that would need to be done there. Once you have those two pieces in place, and you're thinking about the comprehensive education plan for the district, what should be the evaluation questions that you would want to have asked of you, as well as of the folks who are outside in terms of the administrators or the directors or whatever, for you to be able to get feedback on, to be able to then assess, okay, what's the write-up that we provide, for the evaluation. Does that make sense?
Go ahead, Julie.
So just a couple of suggestions from me. I think we should be moving forward with the self-evaluation for sure. I don't know how everyone else is feeling with that. That's a conversation I guess we need to have. We don't vote on anything at this session because it's not a board meeting, but if we come to a consensus of is this something we want to move forward with or not, and how and who is going to do that. First, how everybody's feeling with that. The second thing I wanted to mention was the superintendent evaluation process. I do see it. This is huge. It's a lot of work if we're going to make some big changes, but it just definitely is a start with the superintendent evaluation, so it probably will start with the personnel committee. Probably after negotiations to take a look at that. And then my concern is that we'll redo this, a superintendent, job description, and we're coming up with the evaluations for it, and it's got to be similar questions that we're already looking at. And so is the problem with our evaluation the questions that we're asking, or is it the way we're conducting the evaluation? Should it be more like adding the discussions quarterly, or having the data from the self-evaluation and the administrators first before we evaluate along with these conversations? Will that help us fill out the evaluation that we're already using to save us from having to rework this whole thing, just end up back in the same place where we don't know how to answer the questions? So it's just, that's what's going through my mind right now. But I think all of it would need.
Sequence-wise, I like your point, and Nicole had raised this before too, but having that information prior to, it's one more data point you have in being able to think about, okay, well, you've got your own view and your own filters, but now you're also getting information from the superintendent as well as others who are providing feedback into the process. Not to have them write the words for you, but at least it's, maybe more information, more data for you to use to be able to provide your opinion.
And it's always good to review the job descriptions and make sure they're aligning on what we want. And it may need to change the questions on the evaluation, but I feel like we're probably going to be in that same spot where we really just need to change the process of evaluating and the order we do it. Because right now we all take it on our own without any information, and then we come together and then we have the administrator stuff and we have his self-evaluation, we have our stuff, but we didn't know how to fill out our stuff because we didn't have any conversations ahead of time. So that's kind of what I'm.
And again, if you have some quarterly or check-ins during the year, you may be able to target, some of those areas in thinking about, well, what are you doing here? How can we know more about, what's going on in this particular area? So you're not waiting for the end of the year for that to happen.
Eric?
Yeah, I think to pick up on both of those things. The questions were very difficult to answer by many of us. And I think that's where we should first start, is to look at those questions that are there and ask ourselves, are they relevant to us as a board? A lot of them are relevant to administrators or to teachers or to people that we don't know how the process goes or how Steve is interacting with them or anything like that. So I think we have to focus on what our experience with Steve is and how that works and how we feel he's feeling in that respect, and in combined with our strategic plans that are developed. I think we should be looking at our questions first. That's fine.
Okay, Sandy?
So even if you don't get to change all the questions, is it possible to get the administration's results before we take the questionnaire?
That's what she,
Yeah, but could it be two different separates? Instead of us getting the day, we take the questionnaire and see what they say. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't get it till afterwards.
We need time to think about it.
So we have no clue how the administrators interacting, because there is questions that we have no clue on because we don't deal with it every day. But if we had the administration's answers when we actually did the evaluation, I think that would make a difference. Even if we're not familiar with the question, at least we'll have an idea of who's doing it and what they think of it.
If they're the same questions. And
Yeah.
I mean, that may be, that targeted feedback survey, you may end up with a different set of questions for
Exactly.
administrators than you may have for the board. Now, I would say also though, in terms of your board self-evaluation policy, BBAB, some of the questions that you respond to, I think you should be aligned to that as it relates to, okay, how are you doing as a board in your support of the superintendent? So that also can inform, part of your response to superintendent evaluation. So they're all kind of linked. And it is going to take some work, and it is going to take some time. I asked Steve and Danny, okay, so when's the evaluation due? Okay, well, it's now. So you're not gonna do it for this year. But, you know, is this something you plan for, you know, to be able to see that it, you know, changes for when you do the cycle next time around?
Oh, we'll get it done. We'll get it done.
I believe you.
Okay, Emily?
We got the best superintendent and board chair that we could have. If we didn't, they wouldn't be here.
Would it be wise to have a subcommittee of people who kind of think this way and?
That's really up to you as a board. I mean, I think that would help move it along a little faster, in terms of bringing, that collection of information and conversation together in a smaller group, bringing it back to the full board, you know, for conversation, and then making a decision in terms of where you go with it. Maybe speed things up a little bit.
Because I was thinking, you know, this is a big process. Like, as Julie said, since the personnel committee usually handles job descriptions, let them, you know, I'm thinking they could work on that and then bring back, of course, they would bring back changes to the board. Then to Sandy's point, because normally we don't see the results until we get to the meeting because of the whole confidentiality in people taking forms home. So I don't know how we get past that.
So when you hire, and if you are all on the board and you are working with me in a superintendent search process, you'd all sign confidentiality forms to be able to make sure that that information wasn't shared. Well, this is the same kind of process. In terms of evaluation, the superintendent is a confidential process, and anything you talk about within executive session about the superintendent evaluation can't leave the meeting anyway. There are means and there are ways, some digital, some electronic means of being able to look at information, not having to share it, you know, on paper, to be able to have information not be shared that way, and still you be responsible in a confidential, private manner of being able to be seeing that information to be able to then make your own responses.
Go ahead, Matthew.
We ran into this, I don't know if you recall at MCST when we were doing evaluation of the director there. We had a different set of questions. What are we basing it on? Marzone?
Right now.
Yeah. Who else is out there, right? So the reason I ask this, and I say, because that stuff's written for educators and educational administrators. Okay, and it's nothing against anybody here. I know it because this is what I live and breathe. Okay, the subcommittee's great, but honestly, if we had an independent person in here, they could create a narrative and provide specific examples that they're expected to speak to. Right now, I guarantee that most of those questions that are being asked and that we're answering, we don't know what that looks like in practice. In theory, maybe, but practice is what we're trying to do. So I mean, I want to push for having someone in to really go through the minutia of those and then provide a narrative of the data. And then we could really go through that. And that way, those questions will come to life with specific actions that Steve would be doing on a daily or weekly basis or whatever. And actually put more information, and then we don't have that frustration. I didn't understand that, or I didn't understand this. We still may not understand it, but we might have some data that comes to specific actions that satisfy that job description. Because this is huge to do. I don't know. We run into this a lot. I mean, a lot of school boards, I'm sure, are running into this. Because we want to do the best job possible.
And you're one of about a half a dozen that is, at least has contacted us in terms of, okay, what can we do to be able to refine our process? Not throw what you're doing, because, you have a process in place, but to refine it and to make it more meaningful, not only for you, but also for the results here. It's an important task. And it's one you should be spending some, involvement in some time doing. But you don't want to have a whole lot of responses, not observable, where not enough information, or that kind of stuff.
Because the work we're doing now, sorry, Danny, just one more comment, the work we're doing now on this, I mean, it's gonna go on sometime, okay? So if we have a really rigorous process that is in place, we're gonna be able to then attract some really good talent, because then our rigorous process says to that person who wants to work here, we're gonna push them and make them a better administrator, if that makes sense. So on down the line, hopefully 25 years ago. You know, that process though is.
We may not be here. though.
No, a lot of us won't be here. I'd like to be.
Maybe 92.
And we'll go ahead and.
But it also tells Steve right now how to be a better administrator. It doesn't have to be the next person that gets hired. It gives him some parameters.
Yes.
And then he'll stay 20.
And we'll want to, you know, we don't want to rush this. We want to take our time on it. Because we don't want to do what the state does, change the valuation every couple of years, so you can't look back on previous years to go by. So we can talk more, you know, at our next board meeting where we can make decisions and votes and all that stuff, so.
So first places I'd recommend you start, one is to take a look at your CBI, policy. Is that something that you like what you have, or would you work toward some of the suggestions in the sample? The other thing that I would do is look at the job description, see if that is what you want it to be, or is there anything that you can borrow from what I provided, or if there's a different source that you want to use, and that's good too. Then the third piece really would be to identify a calendar year process in terms of when you want the evaluation to be completed and have the conversation, and then work backwards from there in terms of when you want to have the information solicited as well as provided to the board chair. Once you have the job description, you've got the policy, you also have the comprehensive goals for the district. If you could, while you're doing that work, if you could start on the process of a board self-evaluation and be able to identify goals that you want to have happen for the board, and that also then could kind of be woven into the evaluation of the superintendent when that process was in place. So those are 4 steps I think you could take to begin working in terms of having this process perhaps ready for another year.
Do you have, Steve might already have one. Do you have like a sample of what like a calendar would look like?
Yes. Yeah, so I'll send a copy of those, and there are 3 different ones that I'll share. 2 kind of give it's on like a ledger type paper that goes kind of from July 1st to June 30th. Another one really is more a series of dates where different committees, act. But the one that goes horizontally really looks at the different committees as well as what the responsibilities of those committees might be, as well as when during the year it might be happening. So it would just provide some guidance as well as some foresight, for some, especially new board members coming on. What do I have myself into?
So I know at the fall conference, Andrew Dolph did the presentation, and he had mentioned about the calendar and all that. So
yeah, I do have a sample of one of his because he also did for new superintendents this fall. We talked about that, and so that'll be one of the examples I'll share. Yeah, I also have more specific information in terms of board self-evaluation because I did a session on that at the fall conference as well. I'll send that to Steve and Danny. It's about 8 pages long, but it shows how the information is tallied and how then some decisions were made based on how the 1s, 2s, and 3s stacked up in terms of where people identified where they wanted to do some work as a board. So that may be helpful too. Okay.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
I do like the idea of the self-evaluation as a board, because how can we evaluate him if we're not all in sync? I mean, one could be here, one could be there, one could be there, And how can we be objective if we have 10 different opinions?
And the piece about being able to speak with one voice, you know, to the superintendent, you know, how do you know unless you assess yourself to be able to find that out? Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Steve.
Okay, thank you. We can work-
Scott, how did he do?
Everyone's looking at you.
But I will say this. I look at you guys as a team. So there's individual accountability that each of you bring. But you're going towards a common goal. What is that goal? It's no different than teaching in your classroom. What are the expectations? What are the essential questions? What is his role and responsibility? What are the evaluation questions? If you don't know the answer, don't make it up. I don't know. But somebody else in the layers will know. And when you put all the puzzles together, because I've done it with Steve in another district, I don't know at that point how he reacts to the AOS 93 board. You didn't even go to the meetings. I'm not gonna do it. So when all the puzzles get put together and compiled, that's when it's all, that's where it all comes into a comprehensive approach that you guys can put together a good evaluation. But I'll just say it's a team, and you know you have a good team and you have good chemistry. In order to get good chemistry, you have to have trust. You have to trust each other. You have to trust the superintendent. You have to trust you. I know it when I see it, but I also know dysfunction when I see it. It roars negativity. And this is a laborious process, but it pays off. It's no different than coaching basketball. Doesn't matter how talented people are, if there's no chemistry, you're not gonna win. So it's how people treat each other. I needed to listen and talk. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
How people treat each other, and it's the end goal. It's the same in the classroom. We're here, we're gonna learn about Jamestown. Here, you know, and go forward.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.